My name is Jessica Morgan, and I'm 32 years old. I never thought my hard-earned penthouse would become a battleground between me and my family. When my sister Sophia announced her wedding, I was thrilled for her, but I didn't expect my parents to demand I sell my home to fund her perfect day. When I refused, my mother slapped me across the face, leaving me with a choice: surrender everything I've worked for or stand my ground and face the consequences. What would you do? If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I handled this family betrayal and what happened next. I grew up in a modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Connecticut with my parents, Robert and Diana Morgan. My father worked as an account manager at an insurance company while my mother was an elementary school teacher. They were hardworking people with traditional values who always emphasized the importance of family above all else. From an early age, it was clear that my sister Sophia and I had very different personalities. I was always the ambitious one, making detailed plans for my future, while Sophia was more carefree and social. 3 years younger than me, she was the family darling with her sunny disposition and willingness to follow our parents' expectations without question. "Jessica, why can't you just be happy with what we have?" my mother would often ask when I'd talk about my dreams of living in New York City. Not everything is about climbing some ladder. Family and stability are what matter in life. My father wasn't much different. Those big city dreams are fine for some people, but Morgan women have always prioritized creating a warm home for their families, he'd say, as if my ambitions were somehow betraying our lineage. Despite their reservations, I worked hard in school, earning a partial scholarship to NYU. Unlike many of my classmates whose parents covered their expenses, I juggled 2 part-time jobs while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. Those years were exhausting but formative. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. to work at a coffee shop before classes, then waitress at night, often studying until 2 a.m. before starting the cycle again. My parents visited only twice during my 4 years of college, always finding reasons why the trip was too difficult or expensive. Meanwhile, they never missed a single one of Sophia's local community college performances or events. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a real estate investment firm. The starting salary was barely enough to afford a tiny shared apartment in Brooklyn with 2 roommates, but I saw it as the first step toward my goals. Those early years in my career were challenging. I faced sexism, worked 60-hour weeks, and constantly had to prove myself in an industry dominated by men who'd inherited their positions. By 28, my persistence had paid off. I'd worked my way up to become a senior investment manager, specializing in luxury property acquisitions. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd become successful in helping wealthy people buy the kinds of homes I could only dream about. Then came the day everything changed. After closing a particularly difficult deal that saved the company millions, I received an unexpected bonus that, combined with my savings, allowed me to put a down payment on a small but stunning penthouse apartment in Manhattan. It wasn't the sprawling luxury some might imagine, but it was mine, my sanctuary with a view of the city I'd fought so hard to make my home. When I called my parents to share the news, their response was lukewarm at best. "That's an awful lot of money to spend when you're still single," my mother commented. "What happens when you have a family? You'll have to sell it anyway. Don't you think it would have been wiser to help your sister with her student loans first?" my father added, as if my achievement was somehow selfish. That same month, Sophia announced she was dating William, the son of a prominent family in our hometown. My parents were ecstatic, calling me repeatedly to gush about how well-established and family-oriented he was. The contrast in their reactions couldn't have been more stark. As my career continued to flourish, the requests from my family began. At first, they were small, helping with Sophia's car repairs, lending money for my parents' anniversary trip, contributing to a cousin's medical expenses. I didn't mind helping when I could, but I noticed a pattern forming. My financial assistance wasn't viewed as generosity but as an obligation. "Well, it's not like you have a family to support," my mother would say when asking for money. "God blessed you with success so you could help those around you." Little did I know these small requests were just the beginning. and my sister's engagement would become the catalyst for a family conflict I never saw coming. I was having lunch with Sophia at our favorite childhood diner when she flashed a sparkling diamond ring across the table. Her eyes were brimming with excitement, and despite our differences, my heart swelled with genuine happiness for her. "Will proposed last night. We're getting married," she squealed, drawing attention from nearby tables. I jumped up and hugged her tightly. "I'm so happy for you, Soph. Tell me everything." For the next hour, Sophia detailed William's romantic proposal at the lighthouse where they had their first date. Despite my complicated feelings about marriage being presented as the ultimate achievement for women, I was truly delighted to see my sister so happy. "I want you to be my maid of honor," Sophia said, reaching for my hand. "No one else would understand what this means to me like you do." That moment of sisterly connection was beautiful but fleeting. Within weeks, what had started as plans for a modest ceremony at our parents' church had evolved dramatically. William's parents suggested the Bellevue estate, my mother informed me during a family dinner. "It's the most prestigious venue in the county." The Bellevue was a historic mansion with sprawling gardens that typically hosted celebrity and high society weddings, with a price tag to match. I raised an eyebrow but kept my thoughts to myself. "We're thinking about having at least 200 guests," Sophia added, scrolling through Pinterest boards of elaborate floral arrangements and custom table settings. When I gently asked about the budget, my father waved dismissively. "William's parents are covering half. It's important to make a good impression, especially with their social circle." What they didn't tell me then, what I would discover only weeks later, was that my parents were facing significant financial problems. My father had made a series of poor investment decisions, leveraging their home equity on speculative ventures that had failed spectacularly. They were drowning in debt but maintaining appearances at all costs. As maid of honor, I offered to pay for Sophia's bridal shower and contribute to her dress. It was a generous offer that stretched my budget, but I wanted to support her. However, this seemed to open a floodgate of expectations. First came the call about the photographer. "The one we want is a bit over budget," my mother explained. "But since you work with luxury clients, we thought you might cover this as your gift." The photographer cost nearly $5,000. I agreed, though it meant postponing some repairs my apartment needed. Next was the demand that I finance the rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant. "William's family is handling the reception, so naturally our side should manage this," my father insisted, as if it was perfectly logical. When I suggested a more affordable option, Sophia burst into tears. "You just don't want me to have nice things. You've always been jealous that I found love while you're still alone." Her words stung, especially since I'd been nothing but supportive. Still, I wanted peace, so I agreed to help with the rehearsal dinner but at a more reasonable venue. The real tension began at the dress fitting. Sophia had chosen a gown that cost as much as a small car, expecting me to supplement what our parents couldn't afford. "I've already stretched my budget to the limit," I explained carefully. "I can help with the alterations, but not the entire balance." My mother pulled me aside, her voice low and accusatory. "Your sister will only get married once. If you loved her, you wouldn't put a price tag on her happiness." That evening, I received a group text from Sophia to all the bridesmaids excluding me, complaining about my stinginess and how I was ruining everything with my selfish attitude. It was clearly sent to me by mistake, but the damage was done. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable. At Sunday dinners, there would be pointed comments about family loyalty and sharing blessings. When I'd change the subject, I'd catch my parents exchanging glances, as if confirming their assessment of my character. Despite the growing tension, I continued to support Sophia's wedding plans as best I could within reasonable boundaries. I spent weekends helping with DIY decorations, used my connections to secure a discount on wedding invitations, and even paid for her honeymoon flight upgrades as a surprise. None of it seemed enough. With each contribution, the expectation bar simply rose higher. I began to feel less like a sister and more like an ATM with familial obligations. Still, I held on to hope that once the wedding passed, our relationships might return to normal. I couldn't have been more wrong. At my sister's wedding, my parents demanded my penthouse. I refused. Mom slapped me. I chose revenge. 3 months before the wedding, my parents invited me for what they called an important family dinner. When I arrived at their home, the dining table was set with the good china, the set reserved for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Sophia and William were already seated, along with my parents, all wearing expressions that ranged from solemn to tense. "What's going on?" I asked, taking the only empty chair. "Is everything okay?" My father cleared his throat. "We need to discuss the wedding. There's been a development." My mother poured wine for everyone except herself before my father continued. "William's parents have reconsidered some of their financial commitments to the wedding," he said carefully. "They feel that since Sophia is moving into their guest house after the honeymoon, they're already contributing significantly to the couple's future." I nodded slowly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "We've looked at our finances from every angle," my mother added, her voice taking on the persuasive tone she'd used during my childhood when trying to convince me of something I wouldn't like. "And we've come to the only possible solution." My father reached across the table and took my hand in what felt like a rehearsed gesture. "Jessica, we need you to sell your penthouse." The request hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "Your apartment," Sophia interjected impatiently. "You need to sell it so we can have the wedding we've been planning. You could easily buy something smaller or rent for a while." I withdrew my hand from my father's grip. "You can't be serious. That's my home. I worked for years to afford it." "It's just a status symbol," my mother said dismissively. "You're one person living in a space that could house a family. It's wasteful, really." "If selling is too much," my father offered, as if proposing a reasonable compromise, "you could at least let us use it for the wedding week. William's extended family needs places to stay, and we could host some of the pre-wedding events there. The rehearsal dinner would be so elegant with that city view." I looked around the table, hoping to see some sign that this was an elaborate joke. Instead, I met 4 expectant faces, watching me as if waiting for me to fulfill an obligation. "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "I won't sell my home or turn it into a hotel for wedding guests. That's completely unreasonable." Sophia's face crumpled into tears, her standard response when not getting her way. "You're going to ruin everything. The wedding is in 3 months. Where are we supposed to get the money now?" "Perhaps you could consider a more affordable wedding," I suggested, trying to keep my voice level. "One that fits the budget you actually have." "After all the invitations have gone out? After all the deposits?" my father countered. "We'd lose face completely." "And that's my responsibility, how?" I asked, feeling my patience waning. "I've already contributed thousands to this wedding. I've been supportive, but there are limits." "Limits to family loyalty?" My mother's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me?" The words escaped before I could stop them. "I put myself through college. I built my career without any help. I bought my apartment with money I earned through years of hard work. We raised you," my mother snapped. "We gave you a home and values. And this is how you repay us? By refusing to help your only sister have her perfect day?" I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "I'm happy to discuss alternative ways I could help. Maybe I could take out a smaller loan, or we could look at more affordable options for some of the wedding elements." "It's too late for that," William finally spoke, his tone condescending. "My family has certain expectations for this wedding. Scaling back now would be embarrassing for everyone." "More embarrassing than asking me to sell my home?" I countered. "You've always been selfish," Sophia spat through her tears. "Always putting yourself first. Some things are more important than your precious career and your fancy apartment." "Like what? Your one-day princess fantasy that you can't afford?" As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. The room fell silent. Then my mother stood up, walked around the table to where I was sitting, and did something she hadn't done since I was a child. She slapped me across the face. The sound echoed in the dining room. My cheek stung, but the pain was nothing compared to the shock and betrayal that washed over me. William looked uncomfortable, my father stared at his plate, and Sophia appeared almost satisfied. My mother stood over me, her hand still raised. "How dare you speak to your sister that way? After everything, how dare you?" I stood up slowly, gathering my purse and keys. "I think we're done here. If you walk out that door," my father warned, "don't expect to be welcome at the wedding." I paused at the threshold of the dining room. "Considering you just asked me to sacrifice my home and then assaulted me, I'm not sure I want to be there anyway." The drive home was a blur. Tears streamed down my face as I navigated the familiar route back to the city. My mind replayed the moment of the slap over and over, not just the physical act, but what it represented. The complete dismissal of my autonomy, my achievements, my boundaries. By the time I reached my penthouse, the home they had so casually demanded I surrender, I felt hollow. I stood in my living room, looking out at the twinkling city lights that had once represented all my dreams come true. Now they just reminded me of how alone I truly was. For the next week, I barely left my penthouse. I called in sick to work for the first time in years, unable to face client meetings with my emotional state so fragile. The sanctuary I had created for myself became both my refuge and my prison as I processed what had happened. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from my family, none of which contained apologies. Instead, they ranged from guilt-tripping to outright hostility. "I hope you're proud of yourself for breaking your sister's heart. Mom. After everything we've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us? Dad. Thanks for ruining what should be the happiest time of my life. I'll never forgive you for this. Sophia." I silenced my notifications but couldn't bring myself to block them entirely. Some small, wounded part of me still hoped for reconciliation, for acknowledgement that their demands had been unreasonable. By the third day, extended family members began reaching out. My Aunt Julia called, her voice tight with disapproval. "Jessica, what's this I hear about you refusing to help with Sophia's wedding? Your mother is beside herself. Did she tell you they asked me to sell my home?" I asked. A pause. "Well, she mentioned you were being difficult about sharing your resources. Family helps family, Jessica. That's how we were raised." Similar conversations followed with cousins, my father's brother, even my grandmother, each seemingly working from the same script that cast me as the villain. It became clear my parents were actively turning the family against me, controlling the narrative without sharing the full truth. After a week of isolation, I finally called Taylor, my best friend since college and the only person I trusted completely. "They did what?" she exclaimed after I recounted the dinner confrontation. "And your mother slapped you?" "Jess, that's not just crossing a line, that's demolishing it and salting the earth." Taylor's outrage validated my feelings when I'd begun to doubt myself. She came over that evening with wine and takeout, letting me vent my confusion and hurt. "I keep wondering if I'm overreacting," I admitted. "Maybe I am being selfish." "Stop that right now," Taylor said firmly. "Your family is engaging in financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and literal physical violence. You're not overreacting, if anything, you're underreacting." Despite Taylor's support, I reluctantly decided to attend Sophia's bridal shower the following weekend, hoping to extend an olive branch and keep peace in the family. I bought an expensive gift certificate for a couple's spa retreat and prepared myself for tension. What I wasn't prepared for was the public humiliation that awaited me. The bridal shower was held at my aunt's spacious home, decorated lavishly with fresh flowers and champagne flowing freely. When I arrived, conversation stopped momentarily as everyone turned to stare. My mother greeted me with a cold kiss on the cheek while Sophia barely acknowledged my presence. During the gift-opening ceremony, when my turn came, Sophia opened my card and gift certificate with a dramatic sigh. A gift card, she said flatly. How impersonal. I guess some people just don't understand the meaning of truly thoughtful gifts. The comment was met with uncomfortable murmurs from guests who didn't understand the subtext, but the family members present exchanged knowing glances. Later, as we played bridal shower games, my cousin Amanda asked innocently, "Isn't the maid of honor supposed to organize these events?" Before I could respond, my mother jumped in. Jessica has been too busy with her career to fulfill her duties properly. Thankfully, I was able to step in and give Sophia the celebration she deserves. By the dessert course, the subtle digs had escalated to open hostility. My Aunt Julia loudly discussed how she had helped her son with the down payment for his first house. "That's what family does," she proclaimed, looking pointedly at me. "We sacrifice for each other without question." I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment alone to compose myself. As I passed the partially open door of my aunt's study, I overheard my mother's voice. "She's always been difficult, even as a child. So cold and calculating with her money. Nothing like our Sophia." "Have you considered talking to her therapist?" another voice, my aunt's, suggested. "Maybe there's some medication she should be on. This level of selfishness isn't normal." I froze, unable to believe what I was hearing. They were pathologizing my boundaries, suggesting I was mentally ill for not complying with their demands. I left the bridal shower shortly after, citing a work emergency. No one seemed particularly disappointed to see me go. The final straw came 3 days later when I returned home early from a business lunch that had been cancelled last minute. As I stepped off the elevator to my floor, I heard voices coming from inside my apartment. Thinking I was being robbed, I nearly called the police before recognizing my sister's laugh. I unlocked my door to find Sophia, my mother, and 2 of Sophia's bridesmaids lounging in my living room, drinking my wine and seemingly measuring my space. "What are you doing in my home?" I demanded, shock giving way to anger. "How did you get in here?" My mother looked up, not even having the decency to appear embarrassed. "Oh, Jessica. We didn't expect you until later. We're just taking some measurements for the rehearsal dinner setup." "I never agreed to host the rehearsal dinner here," I said, my voice shaking. "And you didn't answer my question. How did you get into my apartment?" Sophia rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. Mom used the spare key you gave her for emergencies." "This is kind of an emergency." The spare key I'd given them years ago, when I'd had surgery and needed someone to check on me during recovery. A key I'd forgotten to ask for back, never imagining they would abuse my trust this way. "This is breaking and entering," I said coldly. "I want everyone out of my apartment right now, or I'm calling the police." "You would call the police on your own family?" My mother looked genuinely shocked, as if I was the one violating boundaries. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "And I want my key back." "We're only trying to help make Sophia's wedding special," one of the bridesmaids offered awkwardly, gathering her purse. "By trespassing in my home? Planning events I never agreed to host? Going through my things without my permission?" My voice rose with each question. My mother reluctantly handed over the key, but not without a parting shot. "I always knew that money and success would change you, Jessica. I just never realized it would turn you against your own family." After they left, I discovered they had gone through more than just my living room. Dresser drawers were slightly ajar, my home office had papers rearranged, and several bottles of my expensive wine were missing. It felt like a violation beyond the physical intrusion. They had assumed ownership over my space, my possessions, and by extension, me. That night, I called a locksmith and had all my locks changed. I also contacted the building management to ensure no one could access my apartment without my explicit permission, not even claiming to be family. The betrayal had gone beyond emotional manipulation. They had crossed into territory that made me question not just our relationship, but my physical safety and security in my own home. Something inside me hardened that day, the last remnant of guilt or obligation crumbling away as I realized the depth of their entitlement and disrespect. The Monday after the home invasion incident, I scheduled an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Anna Mitchell. For the past year, I'd been seeing her monthly to work through career stress, but this situation demanded immediate attention. They broke into your home? Dr. Mitchell's usually calm demeanor shifted to concern as I recounted the events. They had a key, but yes, they entered without permission and were planning to use my space without consent, I explained, still processing the violation. Jessica, I need you to understand something, Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. What you're describing isn't normal family conflict. It's a pattern of boundary violations that's escalating dangerously. We spent the hour mapping out the progression, from emotional manipulation to financial demands, physical assault, public humiliation, and now invasion of my private space. Seeing it laid out so clearly was both validating and terrifying. What do you think will happen if you continue to resist their demands? She asked. The question hung in the air as I considered the trajectory. They'll keep escalating. Maybe try to access my finances directly. Spread more rumors to damage my reputation. Continue to violate my space. So what boundaries do you need to set to protect yourself? That simple question became the foundation for what I would do next. I wasn't going to be reactive anymore, I was going to be strategic. The following day, I met with Amelia Ramirez, an attorney specializing in family law. I hadn't considered legal protection necessary against my own family, but recent events had changed my perspective. Based on what you've told me, we should take several precautions, Amelia advised. First, document everything, the unauthorized entry, the slap, any threatening or coercive messages. Screenshot all texts and emails. If you speak on the phone, make notes immediately after. She helped me draft a formal cease and desist letter, making it clear that any future unauthorized entry to my home would result in trespassing charges. It felt extreme, but Amelia assured me it was necessary given the escalation. What about my financial accounts? I asked, remembering how easily they'd accessed my home. Let's review your current setup, she suggested. The review revealed vulnerabilities I hadn't considered. My parents were still listed as emergency contacts on some of my older accounts. My mother knew my childhood pet's name and other potential security question answers. I'd mentioned my financial institution in casual conversation, and my investment portfolio details had been shared during family discussions about helping Sophia with wedding costs. We spent hours closing security gaps, changing passwords, updating security questions, adding two-factor authentication, and alerting my financial institutions to potential unauthorized access attempts. I even switched banks for my primary accounts, ensuring my parents wouldn't be able to convince a sympathetic local banker to provide information based on their relationship. That same week, I upgraded my home security system, adding cameras to my front door and balcony access points. The locksmith returned to install an advanced keyless entry system that would log all access attempts. My building management agreed to place a special note in their system requiring photo ID verification for any visitors or service providers requesting access to my unit. As I implemented these protective measures, I received an alarming call from Sandra, my financial advisor. Jessica, I need to verify something. Did you authorize your parents to receive information about your investment portfolio? My blood ran cold. Absolutely not. Why? Your father called claiming you had requested he help manage some investments for your sister's wedding. He had your account number and enough personal details that it raised flags rather than setting off immediate alarms. Fortunately, our new verification protocol required direct confirmation from you. After thanking her profusely for the protection, I sat in stunned silence, contemplating how close they had come to accessing my finances. Had they found statements during their unauthorized visit to my apartment? Had they been planning this for longer than I realized? My investigation deepened. I reached out to my Aunt Julia, with whom I'd always had a more honest relationship despite her recent criticism. Under the guise of wanting to make peace before the wedding, I asked questions that revealed more than she perhaps intended. I'm just trying to understand why Mom and Dad are so fixated on my financial help when the wedding is already so expensive, I said carefully. After some hesitation, Julia sighed. You don't know the half of it, Jessica. Your father lost a significant amount in that real estate venture 3 years ago. They remortgaged the house, took out personal loans. I've been helping them make minimum payments, but they're underwater. This was worse than I'd suspected. Not just poor financial management but actual crisis-level debt that they'd hidden from me while simultaneously demanding I contribute more and more to Sophia's wedding. Does Sophia know? I asked. A telling pause. She knows some of it. Enough that she should understand why they can't afford the wedding they promised her. The pieces clicked into place. Sophia wasn't an innocent victim of our parents' manipulation, she was a willing participant, choosing to pressure me rather than adjust her expectations. This revelation was confirmed the next day when I received an unexpected visit from William, Sophia's fiancé. Unlike the rest of them, he seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the situation. I needed to talk to you directly, he said, standing awkwardly in my living room after I'd verified his identity with building security. Things have gotten out of hand, and I feel partially responsible. William revealed that he'd initially offered to scale back the wedding when his parents reduced their contribution, but Sophia had insisted they find the money elsewhere. She had specifically mentioned my ridiculously expensive apartment as a potential solution. She told me you'd happily help if we just pressured you the right way, he admitted, looking ashamed. She said you respond to family obligation but need to be pushed. The calculated nature of their approach stunned me. They hadn't just made impulsive demands, they had strategized about how to manipulate me most effectively. I'm sorry, William continued. I should have spoken up sooner. My parents aren't actually withdrawing support, they offered a perfectly generous amount, but Sophia kept adding elements to the wedding that pushed us well beyond the budget. After William left, I sat with this new information, feeling a strange calm replace the hurt and anger. The situation was clearer now. My family saw me not as a person with my own life and boundaries, but as a resource to be mined whenever they faced consequences for their own choices. With the complete picture in view, I made my decision. This wouldn't be about cutting ties or simple self-protection anymore. I would attend the wedding, but on my terms. I would offer help, but not the kind they were demanding. Most importantly, I would ensure that the dynamic between us changed permanently, not through anger or revenge, but through clear, immovable boundaries that would either reform our relationship or end it. I spent the next week preparing, consulting financial advisors about options for helping family members with addiction issues, as gambling had clearly become for my father, researching family therapy programs, and setting up a formal trust that could provide structured assistance without enabling harmful behavior. For the first time since this conflict began, I felt not just reactive but purposeful. The wedding was no longer something to dread but an opportunity, a chance to establish a new relationship with my family, one built on honesty and mutual respect rather than exploitation and guilt. The morning of Sophia's wedding dawned bright and clear. I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting the deep blue bridesmaid dress I'd paid for myself after being reinstated in the wedding party. My parents had grudgingly extended the invitation back after realizing that my absence would raise too many questions among extended family and friends. I'd maintained minimal contact with them since the apartment incident, responding to wedding-related logistics with brief, professional messages while ignoring the emotional appeals and guilt trips that continued to pepper their communications. As I applied my makeup, I reminded myself of the plan: remain dignified, observe carefully, and wait for the right moment. This wasn't about creating drama on Sophia's day, it was about positioning myself for the conversation that would follow. The ceremony was being held at St. Mark's Cathedral, an imposing Gothic structure that typically booked years in advance. As I entered the hushed sanctuary, I couldn't help but notice the extravagance: cascading floral arrangements on every pew, custom stained glass overlay panels, a string quartet playing softly. Even with my limited knowledge of wedding costs, I estimated the ceremony alone had cost well into the six figures. In the bridal suite, my mother barely acknowledged me while fussing over Sophia's elaborate gown. My sister, for her part, gave me a cold nod before turning back to her other bridesmaids. The tension was palpable, but I maintained my composure, helping where needed and staying out of the way otherwise. "The photographer wants a family photo before we line up," one of the wedding coordinators announced, poking her head into the room. Outside in the church garden, we assembled for photos. As the photographer positioned us, my father leaned close to my ear. "I hope you're planning to behave today," he whispered. "This is your sister's day. Don't make it about your issues." I simply smiled for the camera, the irony of his statement not lost on me. They had been the ones who made Sophia's wedding about my finances, my home, my supposed obligations, not me. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I had to admit. Sophia glowed as she walked down the aisle on our father's arm. William looked genuinely moved as he watched her approach. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of what might have been a normal family celebration uncomplicated by manipulation and demands. At the reception, held at the Bellevue estate as originally planned, I was seated at the family table but positioned at the far end, physically representing my emotional distance. The venue was even more lavish than the church: custom lighting installations, ice sculptures, a 10-piece band, and food stations representing cuisines from around the world. During the cocktail hour, I overheard snippets of conversation from relatives about the stunning, no-expense-spared celebration. An uncle mentioned he'd heard my father had really stretched to give his daughter the wedding of her dreams. The narrative they'd created was one of parental sacrifice rather than financial irresponsibility. I maintained a pleasant demeanor, making small talk with distant relatives and friends while observing my parents. They appeared strained beneath their proud smiles, my father making frequent trips to the open bar, my mother's eyes constantly scanning the room as if checking that everything was perfect, or perhaps calculating the final cost of it all. The moment that changed everything came during the reception speeches. My father stood, champagne in hand, his voice slightly slurred as he addressed the crowded ballroom. "When my little girl told me she'd found the man of her dreams, I promised her the wedding she deserved," he said, emotion thickening his words. "No father could be prouder than I am today, seeing her begin this new chapter in proper style. We want to thank everyone who sacrificed to make this day possible." His eyes flickered briefly to me before continuing, "Family means supporting each other, no matter the cost. Some understand that better than others." The dig was subtle enough that only those familiar with our conflict would catch it, but it was unmistakable to me. I maintained my composure, clapping politely when he finished while ignoring the pointed looks from my mother and sister. Later, as dinner wound down and dancing began, I found myself at the bar next to William's father, James. We'd been introduced only briefly before the rehearsal dinner, and I knew little about him except that he was a successful cardiac surgeon. "Beautiful wedding," I commented, making polite conversation. "Extravagant is the word I'd use," he replied with a wry smile. "Between us, I think it got a bit out of hand. My wife and I offered what we thought was a generous contribution, but somehow the plans kept expanding." This aligned with what William had told me, but I was curious to hear more from his perspective. "I heard there were some changes to the financial arrangements," I said carefully. James looked surprised. "Not from our end. We gave exactly what we promised from the beginning, which was already more than we spent on our daughter's wedding last year. Your parents insisted on matching our contribution, though we tried to tell them it wasn't necessary." "They were determined to match your contribution?" This was new information. He nodded, lowering his voice. "Between us, I was concerned about it. William mentioned some financial difficulties they've had. I even suggested scaling back, but your sister was quite adamant about certain elements." "Did William happen to mention they asked me to sell my apartment to help fund the wedding?" I asked, watching his reaction carefully. James's eyes widened in genuine shock. "They what?" "No, that's completely inappropriate. Why would they even think that was an option?" Our conversation was interrupted by the wedding planner announcing the cake cutting, but James's reaction had confirmed what I suspected: the financial pressure had been entirely manufactured by my parents and sister, with William's family serving as convenient scapegoats. As the evening progressed, I circulated through the reception, gathering more pieces of the puzzle. A comment from my aunt about helping my parents with their mortgage payments. A remark from William's mother about my father's concerning behavior at the casino during the bachelor weekend. The wedding planner's surprise when I mentioned I was the bride's sister. "Oh. I thought you were just a friend since you weren't involved in any of the planning meetings." By the time the reception reached its peak, I had a clearer picture than ever before. I was waiting for the right moment to process this information when I saw my mother leading Sophia toward a secluded alcove off the main ballroom, their expressions serious despite the celebration around them. I followed discreetly, stopping just within earshot of their conversation. "They're asking for the final payment tonight," my mother was saying urgently. "The credit card was declined. Your father's trying to handle it, but can't you call the bank again? Tell them to extend the credit limit just for today?" Sophia's voice had an edge of panic. "We've already done that twice. They won't budge without a substantial payment on what we already owe." "What about Jessica? Did you try again with her? Surely she can see now how important this is." My mother's voice hardened. "She's made her position clear. Sitting there all night, judging us, after everything we've done. I'd heard enough." I stepped into view, causing both women to startle. "Were you spying on us?" Sophia demanded, her face flushing. "I was concerned," I replied calmly. "And it sounds like I had reason to be." "You're having problems paying for the reception?" My mother's posture stiffened. "It's none of your concern. We'll handle it." "By maxing out more credit cards? Taking out more loans? How deep are you already, Mom? You have no right to question our finances when you're sitting on a gold mine and refusing to help your family," my mother hissed, stepping toward me. I stood my ground. "I've contributed over $15,000 to this wedding already." "But that's not enough, is it?" "It's never going to be enough as long as you see me as your personal bank account." Sophia began to tear up, her signature move. "It's my wedding day. How can you do this right now?" "I'm not doing anything except refusing to be manipulated again." "I know everything, Sophia. About Dad's gambling. About how you knew they couldn't afford this wedding but pushed for more and more anyway, expecting me to bail you all out." My sister's tears dried up surprisingly quickly. "You've always been so smug about your success, lording it over us. Would it really have hurt you to help make my day special?" "I did help. Considerably. What hurts is being slapped, having my home invaded, and being treated like an ATM rather than a daughter and sister." My mother moved as if to slap me again, but this time I caught her wrist before she could make contact. "Not again," I said quietly but firmly. "Never again." The three of us stood frozen in that moment until my father appeared, his face ashen. "The venue manager wants to speak with us," he said to my mother, before noticing the tableau before him. "What's going on here?" "Jessica was just leaving," my mother said coldly. "Actually," I replied, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation. About the gambling addiction that's destroying your finances. About the lies you've told the entire family. About how you tried to access my accounts without my permission." My father's face drained of color. "How did you?" "It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is what happens next. You have two options. You can continue down this path of destruction, or you can accept my help, on my terms." "Your terms?" my mother scoffed. "Who are you to dictate terms to us? I'm the daughter you raised to be independent and successful, and then resented for becoming exactly that. I'm the sister who's watched Sophia manipulate everyone around her to avoid facing reality. And I'm the only person standing between you and financial ruin right now." The venue manager appeared behind my father, his expression professionally concerned. "Mr. Morgan?" "About the outstanding balance." I looked between my parents' panicked faces and Sophia's angry one. "I'll handle this," I told the manager. "Give us a moment, please." When he stepped away, I turned back to my family. "I'll cover the remaining balance for tonight." Not for you, I said to my parents, and not for you, I added to Sophia. But for all the guests who don't deserve to see this beautiful day end in humiliation. Before they could respond, I continued, starting tomorrow, we're going to have a very different relationship. One based on honesty and respect, or we won't have one at all. The choice is yours. I walked away to speak with the venue manager, leaving my family in stunned silence. For the first time in this entire conflict, I felt completely in control, not out of anger or revenge, but from a place of clarity and strength that no one could take from me again. The day after the wedding, while Sophia and William left for their honeymoon, first-class tickets upgraded through my airline points, a gift I'd arranged months before, I set my plan in motion. This wasn't revenge in the traditional sense of trying to hurt those who had hurt me. Instead, it was something more powerful, a complete restructuring of our family dynamic that would either heal us or free me. My first step was scheduling a meeting with my parents at a neutral location, a private room at my attorney's office. They arrived looking defensive and exhausted, the aftermath of the wedding still evident in their postures. Before we begin, I said once we were seated, I want to make something clear. I love you both. That hasn't changed. What needs to change is how we relate to each other. My father started to speak, but I held up my hand. Please let me finish. I've had a lot of time to think about this, and I've made some decisions. I placed a folder on the table between us. Inside is documentation of everything that's happened, the unauthorized entry to my apartment, the attempted access to my accounts, and the physical assault. I'm not showing you this as a threat, but as evidence of how far things have deteriorated. My mother's face hardened. So you're building a case against us? Your own parents? No, I replied calmly. I'm offering you a path forward. I've consulted with financial advisors and addiction specialists, and I've created a structured way to help that doesn't enable harmful behaviors. I slid another document across the table. This is information about the Restoration Program, one of the top addiction recovery centers specializing in gambling addiction. I've secured a place for Dad, fully paid, starting next month. My father's face flushed with anger and shame. I don't have a gambling problem. I've had some bad luck with investments, that's all. Dad, your investments have cost you nearly $400,000 over the past 3 years. The equity in your home is gone. You've maxed out 7 credit cards. This isn't bad luck, it's an addiction. His denial crumbled visibly as I listed the facts, details I'd gathered through careful investigation and conversations with extended family who'd been covering for him. How dare you air our private business like this, my mother interjected, though her indignation seemed hollow compared to her earlier hostility. Privacy has served as a shield for enabling behavior, I replied. And it stops now. Here's my offer, I've established a trust to help you keep your home. It will make monthly payments directly to your mortgage company, but with conditions. Dad completes the recovery program. Both of you attend financial counseling. And we all participate in family therapy to address the patterns that brought us here. My mother's expression shifted from defiance to calculation. And if we refuse? Then I can't help you. I'll need to step back completely for my own well-being. The choice is entirely yours. My father stared at the documents, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. We could lose the house, he said quietly, more to himself than to us. Yes, I confirmed gently. But you don't have to. This isn't punishment, it's support with boundaries. They didn't accept immediately. In fact, they left the meeting angry and resistant, insisting they would find another way. I had anticipated this response and gave them time to process, knowing that reality would eventually overcome pride. 3 weeks later, my father called. His voice was different, subdued, but with an undercurrent of something I hadn't heard in years, honesty. The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings, he admitted. We've run out of options. My offer still stands, I said, feeling no satisfaction in their predicament, only sadness that it had come to this. 2 days later, they accepted my terms. My father entered the recovery program the following month, and while the process wasn't smooth, there were relapses, arguments, and moments when it seemed the old patterns would prevail. It was a beginning. For 6 months, I maintained firm boundaries with my family. I attended the weekly family therapy sessions as promised but otherwise kept my distance, needing space to heal from the wounds they'd inflicted. I declined Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, and casual visits, explaining that rebuilding trust would take time. My relationship with Sophia remained particularly strained. Unlike our parents, who had been forced to confront reality by their financial collapse, she had William's family's support as a buffer. She sent occasional text messages that fluctuated between half-hearted apologies and subtle accusations that I was overreacting. The turning point with Sophia came unexpectedly, 7 months after the wedding. She called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice tight with suppressed tears. "Can we meet? Please? I need to talk to someone who won't judge me." We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. Sophia looked different, her carefully maintained appearance slightly disheveled, the confident posture diminished. "William and I are having problems," she confessed after ordering coffee. "His parents have expectations about how we should live, when we should have children, everything." "And you feel trapped by their expectations?" I asked, recognizing the irony. "Yes," she admitted. "They're helping us financially, which seemed great at first, but now every decision comes with their input. William says I'm being ungrateful, that this is just how family works." I resisted pointing out the parallel to how our parents had treated me. Instead, I asked, "What do you want, Sophia?" "Not what they want for you, what do you want?" She looked startled by the question, as if no one had asked her that before. "I want independence. To make our own choices. To build something that's ours, not handed to us with conditions." "That's exactly what I wanted too," I said gently. The realization dawned slowly across her face. "I never saw it that way before. I always thought you were just being difficult, unwilling to help family." "It wasn't about the money, Sophia. It was about respect for my autonomy, my choices, my boundaries." Our conversation that day didn't instantly repair everything, but it opened a door. Sophia began asking for advice about building financial independence. I suggested community college courses in business management, helped her update her resume, and connected her with employment opportunities that would give her skills and income separate from William's family. By the 1-year anniversary of the wedding, things had shifted dramatically. My father, now 9 months into recovery, was maintaining sobriety and had found part-time work that accommodated his ongoing treatment. My mother had taken a full-time position at her former school, humbled by necessity but gradually regaining her dignity through self-sufficiency. Their house payment was still coming from my trust, but they were contributing increasingly to their own expenses. Sophia had completed her first semester of business courses and found a job at a local marketing firm. Her marriage was on steadier ground now that she was establishing her own identity. William, to his credit, had supported her growth once he understood she wasn't rejecting his family but rather building herself. I invited them all to my penthouse for dinner on the anniversary weekend, the first time they had been there since the unauthorized entry incident. The symbolism wasn't lost on any of us. They arrived with appropriate gifts, flowers, wine, a handmade card, rather than expectations or demands. As we sat around my dining table, the city lights twinkling through the windows, my father raised his glass of sparkling water. "To Jessica," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Who had the courage to break unhealthy patterns when the rest of us couldn't see them. Thank you for your tough love." My mother added softly, "And for giving us a chance to be better, even when we didn't deserve it." Sophia reached for my hand across the table. "And for showing me what real strength looks like." I felt tears welling as I raised my own glass. To healing. To boundaries. And to loving each other enough to want the best for each other, not just from each other. Later that evening, after they had gone, I stood on my balcony looking out at the city I loved. The home I had fought to protect had become not just my sanctuary but a symbol of the healthy boundaries that had ultimately saved my family. I had found something unexpected in this painful journey. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was an act of profound self-respect that paradoxically created space for more authentic relationships. By refusing to be manipulated and exploited, I had actually given my family the opportunity to grow beyond their destructive patterns. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give those we love is the courage to say no when necessary, even when it feels like betrayal. True love doesn't demand sacrifice of your selfhood, it celebrates your wholeness and respects your boundaries. As I looked out at the twinkling lights, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible with my family. The journey had been painful, but the destination, mutual respect and genuine support, was worth every difficult step. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't understand your perspective? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes standing your ground is the most loving thing you can do, even when others don't see it that way at first. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complex family dynamics and finding your strength. Remember, healthy boundaries aren't selfish, they're essential for authentic relationships. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage in your own.